क्या ये समय की मांग नहीं है कि हमारे देश में कम से कम मतदाता सूची तो एक हो? आज देश का दुर्भाग्य है, जितने चुनाव उतनी मतदाता सूची। कितना देश का खर्च हो रहा है, कितना मैन पावर उस मतदाता सूची में लग रहा है। इलेक्शन के रिफॉर्म्स अनिवार्य है, कर होने रहने चाहिए। अच्छा, हमारे देश में पहले एक देश एक चुनाव होता था कि बाद में गड़बड़ होने के बाद डिरेल हुआ। चर्चा के बाद नहीं होगा, लेकिन हम पहले से तक ये बिल्कुल नहीं, हम नहीं घुसने देंगे। ये तरीका लोकतंत्र में नहीं होता है। खुले मन से बात होनी चाहिए, हर प्रयास का स्वागत होना चाहिए, प्रयास के अंदर हम अपनी भूमिका बतानी चाहिए।
वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन के लिए देश को आगे आना होगा।
Viewers, the opposition's outcry against the Modi cabinet's proposal for simultaneous polls is nothing short of bewildering. For 15 years, from 1952 to 1967, India held simultaneous elections under Jawaharlal Nehru's leadership, and it was considered the norm. But in 2024, the opposition claims that simultaneous polls are against federalism. They are against voters' rights, that the voters' rights will be snatched, and it's undemocratic. But weren't these the same principles upheld during Nehru's rule? It's puzzling viewers to see how a consultative exercise aimed at streamlining the electoral process is now being labeled dictatorial. Think about it. The opposition's fear-mongering tactics won't hold water. Simultaneous polls are not about undermining regional parties or federalism, but about promoting efficient governance and electoral reform. The PRS draft report on simultaneous elections suggests amendments to the constitution to facilitate this change rather than resorting to emotional appeals. The opposition should engage in a rational debate, viewers. India needs a nuanced discussion on simultaneous polls, considering its benefits and potential challenges. Let's not forget, simultaneous polls were once the norm in India. It's time to revisit this practice, not out of nostalgia, viewers, or to give tribute to Nehru, but out of a desire for electoral reform and effective governance. The opposition should put aside its biases and join the consultative process to shape a better electoral future for the country.
ये प्रैक्टिकल नहीं है और ये चलने वाला नहीं है। ये सिर्फ चुनाव जब आते कोई ना कोई कुछ मुद्दा नहीं मिल रहा उनको, ऐसी चीजें बात करने के लिए, इश्यू को डाइवर्ट करने के लिए वो बात करते हैं, और इसीलिए और पूरे देश के लोग कोई मानने वाले भी नहीं है।
एक स्टेट का एक टेन्योर होता है असेंबली का, आप कैसे कटल करेंगे उसको? कर्नाटका का इलेक्शन आप बोलेंगे 29 में करा दो, उनका तो पहले इलेक्शन होना चाहिए कर्नाटका का। आप कौन होते हैं भाई? स्टेट की जनता का आप क्यों छीन रहे हैं?
ऑल गिमिक्स, वो रिग करना चाहते हैं इलेक्शन। डिलिमिटेशन से जब नहीं होता तो वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन का बोलते हैं। बीजेपी से हजम नहीं हो पा रहा है कि उनके जो जमीन, उनके जो पैर तले जमीन है वो खिसक रही है, तो हर एक चीज में उनको प्री रिगिंग करनी है। अब डिलिमिटेशन भी प्री रिगिंग था, वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन इज ऑल्सो वे टू रिग द इलेक्शन।
वन नेशन वन इलेक्शन इस सरकार का पुनः एक ऐसा ऑब्सेशन है जिसकी जड़ें कहीं नहीं है, सिर्फ इसमें कि डाइग्रेशन हो, कुछ दिन हेडलाइन मैनेजमेंट हो, चर्चा हो, क्योंकि आपके पास इस तरह की कंटिजेंसीज के लिए क्या प्रावधान है, nobody knows.
You heard the reactions. Let's open this up. Tuhin Sinha, national spokesperson of the BJP, Sagarika Ghosh, member of Parliament, Rajya Sabha of the Trinamool Congress, Dr. Anand Ranganathan needs no introduction, IP Singh, national spokesperson of the Samajwadi Party, Tehseen Poonawala here with us, Dr. Shoaib Jamai, state president of the Delhi AIMIM. Ms. Ghosh, let me begin by asking you, what is the fundamental problem with this idea of simultaneous election?
Let's be very clear. In the general elections of 2024, the voter has repudiated the BJP's fanciful idea of one nation, one poll, one leader, one thought, one party, one culture, one religion, one leader. This has been repudiated by the voter in 2024. The voter has voted for multi-party democracy. The voter has voted for the multi-party system. The voter has rejected the one-party state. For the BJP to now float this kite of, this is just kite flying of one nation, one poll is nothing but a weapon of mass distraction. I'm a member of parliament. I would have loved to have been on your show to talk about unemployment, crimes against women. What are we talking about? One nation, one poll, a weapon of mass distraction. The BJP is about to be wiped out in Haryana, will lose in Maharashtra, will lose in the by-polls. Therefore, this is yet another talking point to divert from the real issues. Now, there are 2 points here that I want to elucidate before you. The first is the one of principle. The second is one of the practicality. Principle. This is against the basic structure of the Constitution. The basic structure of the Constitution is India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. Now, this is against diversity. It is against the diversity dividend. It is against the rights of states. It is against the rights of the legislative assemblies. It is against the distinctive identities, issues, realities of every state. So, as a principle, it is against the basic structure of the Constitution. Second, how are you going to do it? You can't even hold Maharashtra and Haryana at the same time because you're so busy that the Ladli Behna benefits have to reach in October. So you postponed Maharashtra elections to October. You can't even do Haryana and Maharashtra at the same time. And you are taking on this enormous, humongous task of one nation, one poll, you will have to get this ratified by the state assemblies. You will have to dissolve the state assemblies. There will be multiple legal challenges.
Okay.
The legal architecture of this is going to take you at least 10 years.
Okay. Now,
I would also like to make another point. The head of this committee, this top-down committee that has been set up to on this one nation, one poll is Ram Nath Kovind, the distinguished former 14th president of India. A president is never made the head of a committee. This is humiliation of a president. You cannot bring a president and make him a head of a committee. So you have humiliated the president. You are kite flying. It's a weapon of mass distraction.
Right.
You will not be able to implement it for 10 years.
oh my God, weapon of mass distraction.
Legislation that is involved, and it is against the basic structure. It is against the diversity of India.
Okay, Ms. Ghosh.
Ms.
Ghosh,
diversity dividend.
that's great for an opening argument. You were talking about principle and practicality. On principle, I have a straightforward question, man. When the simultaneous polls were held under the leadership of Prime Minister Nehru, no one questions the principle even now.
Please be very clear.
No, 1 minute, ma'am, 1 minute.
Clear.
And the second aspect, just hear me out, ma'am. The other is about practicality. Isn't it a bit rich for the TMC to talking about how to hold elections? Have you forgotten what the courts have said about how elections are held in West Bengal? Should I read out what Justice Amrita Sinha, judge of the Calcutta High Court, said? The elections is to be stopped. The condition is such in a panchayat election with so much violence, unrest, bloodshed. It's a shame for the state. Court can understand what the situation is. I'm getting matters where people are being beaten up. They are threatened with rape and murder. This is panchayat election, ma'am. You're talking about practicality?
Let us understand 2 points. The reality of the 1960s is a 360-degree difference from what the political reality is now. Politics is now hyper-local. You have a multiplicity of parties, a multiplicity of governments, a multiplicity of states. You have political parties representing small demographics. You have political movements representing small demographics. The political landscape in India is hyper-localized, much more
Which is why I asked you what happens to panchayat elections in West Bengal. I understand. Even if we were to take your argument of the elections being hyper-local, ma'am, nothing explains the mismanagement of the panchayat elections, Ms. Ghosh. Okay, Dr. Ranganathan.
As far as the conduct of elections are concerned, let us not go into the election commission and the manner. And first, let us talk about how the election commission is unable to secure a level playing field, is unable to create fair and fair elections, is unable to hold elections in a free and fair manner because of the interference.
Let's get in the others. Ma'am, let's quickly get in the others. Dr. Ranganathan, what do you make of the proposal and the arguments made by Ms. Sagarika Ghosh?
No, it's not about the arguments made by one panelist. First of all, good evening, Pranesh, and good evening to my fellow panelists. May I please begin, before I come to the thrust of my thesis, gently quiz you over something, with your permission?
Please, sir, please go ahead.
Thank you. Pranesh, what is common between GST, erecting huge flagpoles, bullet trains, OROP, playing national anthem in cinema halls, Aadhaar, Land Acquisition Act, CAA, the new parliament building, the 3 farm laws, and one nation, one election?
The opposition's opposition.
That comes secondary. But what is common is they were all Congress ideas. They were all implemented first by the Congress.
That's right.
And the tragedy is the moment Congress comes in opposition, it starts flagging and opposing the very ideas that it has implemented for 60, 70 years. By the way, for my previous panelists to say that the difference between 60s and now is 360 degrees, 360 degrees isn't difference at all. It should be 180 degrees. But let's talk about not the hypocrisy of the Congress when it is opposing the very ideas that it has implemented, because it's a hypocrite, a party that is built upon hypocrisy. So it doesn't mind that. The question is, when the Congress is opposing this one nation, one election, it is going to the nub of criticizing Nehru. For 15 years, the Congress implemented one nation, one election. 4 to 5 general elections and state elections were held simultaneously, synchronously. And now for you to say that Nehru was destroying the constitution, Nehru was against the framework of constitution, is just hypocrisy gone ballistic. I don't know how Congress and its supporters will survive that. Be that as it may. Now let me in the next 1 minute just tell you the facts about the one nation, one election and the whole issue. I must admit that right now I am, as you said, it requires a very nuanced discussion. I still am undecided about it, to be honest about it, because there are pros and cons. There are advantages and disadvantages. Let me mention a few. The clear advantages are you will save an enormous amount of money, running into possibly lakhs of crores, as some estimates say, although I would love the government to give a bona fide estimate. It is said that for the last Lok Sabha election, the central government officially spent 5,000 crores. Obviously, the unofficial figure would be 10 times that. So yes, you're going to save a lot of money when you synchronize the elections. Number 2, the administrative costs are going to be less. The administration that is forced to go from one place to the other perpetually all through the 5 years, possibly more, is now going to be concentrated on just maybe the so-called one nation, one election season of a month or month and a half. So yes, you're going to save a lot on that. And finally, very importantly, the lot of money, time, resources that are spent by our security forces, I think that is addressed by one nation, one election. So you don't have to perpetually be on the move, having tens of thousands of CRPF and other additional forces being deployed for central as well as state elections. Right. You do it in one go. The disadvantage obviously is, Pranesh, it's an emotional one. We are, without being patronizing, we're a very emotional people. I give you one example of the tragic assassination of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and the aftermath of that, someone who had zero political experience fought the elections and won 415 seats. And I dare say if the state elections were held synchronously with the central election, Rajiv Gandhi and Congress would have swept each and every election. Some people would rightly bring out the thing about Pulwama. Yes, so we get, as a nation, stay swayed by emotional issues. Having said that, it does make sense to have local issues differentiated properly from the central ones. So yes, I am undecided. That's my honest opinion.
Tehseen, why is the Congress saying that this is a distraction?
Thank you for having me on the show, Pranesh. At the onset, the reason this has been proposed now, as the first speaker rightly said, the Member of Parliament, that it is a weapon of mass distraction. And what is the mindset of the BJP? One nation, one donation. So only the BJP has resources and other political parties don't have resources because they're in government. Now, apart from this being an attack on the federal structure, let me explain why to you this is an attack on the federal structure. Let's say Karnataka's assembly gets over and Telangana's doesn't. Why should Telangana sacrifice? And why should the people of Karnataka be devoid of the right to vote and elect a new assembly when the assembly is being dissolved? More importantly, if this is for national interest, and I do believe that the intentions of the Honorable Prime Minister are good, let's believe that. Why doesn't he sacrifice just now? Why doesn't he say one nation, one election? Let's have re-elections right now for Lok Sabha. I will step down. खुद नहीं करेंगे, दूसरों को बोलेंगे आप करो, sacrifice आप करो, आप करो, आप करो. State governments, now they'll say state governments are BJP. No. Why didn't the union government step down? They just got elected. They also resigned. He said, I also resigned just now. Why won't he do that? The point of the matter is that, as the first speaker rightly said, Haryana and Maharashtra, please look at the record. When has Haryana and Maharashtra is the richest state in the country, the most peaceful state. When has the elections not happened together? Why did you not have Maharashtra election? Because you wanted the Prime Minister to come to Maharashtra and campaign. You couldn't do Maharashtra and Jharkhand together. I challenge the BJP. Now, in November, along with Maharashtra and Jharkhand, do Delhi. They will not be able to do. Why? Because Amit Shah ji wants to campaign, Modi ji wants to campaign, but he'll be busy campaigning in Maharashtra and Jharkhand, so he can't campaign in Delhi. So you do, आप करो तो चमत्कार, कोई और करे तो गुनेगा. That their mindset. One last question. For all the news channels today, I've seen a lot of news channels with no disrespect, and I know I respect you a lot. All news channels, master stroke, demonetization also master stroke. Why don't we have one nation, one news channel, one nation, one program at 8 o'clock? Why should we have diverse programs? For example, you're discussing one nation, one poll. The other channel I was invited on, which I rejected, is discussing.
Let's begin by having one argument, one logic at least.
No,
1 minute.
Why not?
1 minute. This time go on. 1 minute. You've made your point. But let's to answer your question. You were talking about, throwing a dare to the BJP, and I'll get to Hinsina to respond to you. Answer a simple question. The BJP hasn't said no. This is a process. This is just the beginning of a process. Like Dr. Ranganathan is saying that, look, a lot needs to be answered in terms of, logistics and other things. Many constitutional amendments will have to be done before this becomes a reality. So before all of that, why call it a weapon of mass distraction?
I'll answer that to you, because they have no answers for all the things they're failing at, so they're distracting, because none of this will happen. But again, I'll answer that in one line. The cabinet is a very serious body. A cabinet passing or something is extremely serious. You agree on this, Pranesh? It's very serious, headed by the Prime Minister. Challenge the BJP spokesperson in the next 2 minutes, stop non-stop, and tell us the intricate details of this plan. He will not know it. Nobody knows it.
No, 1 minute. That's not the point. Listen, 1 minute. This is not 1 minute. This is not the NAC that will share the plan with the members. It will first be discussed in Parliament, and then the 1 minute.
Cabinet has passed something.
So what?
And the members of India don't know. The media is discussing it.
No, the media is discussing the principle, the idea. The media is not discussing.
So when are we discussing an idea? What are the steps for it?
Is that a wrong question? Steps are you taking to ensure that the opposition is on board, so that their concerns are taken care of?
Or what did the cabinet pass?
Well, good evening. Good evening. Good evening, Pranesh. Good evening, everybody. The one nation, one poll is a bold idea whose time has come, and anybody who's criticizing it on, frivolous and incoherent grounds is doing a huge disservice to the nation. Now, before I even come to the benefits of it, let me address the two major grouses against one nation, one poll, as indicated by the two panelists on your show. The first grouse, it is anti-federal in nature, right? Between 1951 to 1967, when these elections were held, it was the anti-federal nature of the Congress government which had this, simultaneous polls discontinued. When you misuse Article 356 90 times to dismiss elected state governments, which was one of the main reasons why simultaneous polls eventually got derailed and elections were eventually taking place across the year, the main reason was the anti-federal nature of the Congress party, which we used to misuse Article 356 at every beck and call. Number two, what is this mass distraction? Only weak minds get distracted so easily. Even today, if you ask me, I'm very focused on the justice for RG Kar victim. But yes, these are larger issues which concern the future of the country. One nation, one poll has a very clear threefold advantage. Number one, it will streamline and sanitize the process of elections from multiple elections. And even if you look at the initial note, very clearly it outlines even the deadline for local elections, which is 90 days, exactly 90 days after the completion of the Lok Sabha and Assembly polls. Number two, the cost cutting, 5,000 crores, as Anand just mentioned, 5,000 crores is the official figure spent on the Lok Sabha elections. Synchronizing elections will obviously save the costs. And number three, optimizing governance. Please understand that at a time when we are chasing gargantuan goals, Viksit Bharat goals, wasting 60 days at a stretch for any state on assembly elections is a huge wastage. And as of today, I'm sure Naveen Patnaik and Mayawati ji have come forward and supported the initiative. The Congress should show more courage, it should show more foresight, and it should do the same.
One second, just one line. As predicted by me, the BJP spokesperson spoke everything but nothing. He hasn't told you how 5,000 crores will get cut. He hasn't told you how they'll pass it. He hasn't told you what's happened in the cabinet. They know nothing. All they've been given is 4 lines to ratify. 4 lines they are telling since all channels. Please tell us specifics. None of us know specifics. We expect the BJP to tell us
of course.
specifics.
There are many people, 1 minute. There are many in the opposition camp, Tehseen, for your information, and I know you're aware of it. The Karnataka Chief Minister, the current Karnataka Chief Minister, in 2016 had welcomed the idea. Yeah. Today he's saying something else. And there are many like that. 1 minute. There are many like that. At least Dr. Ranganathan is being honest. He says, look, I haven't made up my mind. Let me bring in Mr. Dr. Shoaib Jamai. Dr. Shoaib Jamai, Owaisi ji कह रहे हैं कि वोटर्स से उनके राइट्स ले लिए जाएंगे. ये कौन सा प्रपोजल है?
See, as our party president has already tweeted, that this will destroy the federal structure of the constitution, and it will definitely hamper the prospect of the regional parties. BJP wanted to kill the regional parties and keep alive only the national parties. 2-party system will work. See, this is called one nation, one Raja. One Mahamanav will only want to, राज करना चाहते हैं. ऐसा नहीं चलेगा. अगर आज शायद मैं पहली बार फर्स्ट टाइम रेयरली एग्री विद आनंद रंगनाथन कि कांग्रेस प्रपोज करती है कोई चीज़ और बाद में उसको बीजेपी इम्प्लीमेंट करना चाहती है. इसका जवाब तो लेना ही पड़ेगा. लेकिन सवाल ये उठता है कि आप रीजनल पार्टीज़ को क्यों ख़त्म करना चाहते हैं? इतना इकोनॉमिक बर्डन तो नहीं होगा. जिस देश में 30-30 हज़ार करोड़ रुपया मोदी जी के दोस्तों को बांट दिया जाता है, बैंक लूट दिए जाते हैं, वहाँ 5,000 करोड़ एक डेमोक्रेसी को बचाने के लिए, एक वाइब्रेंट डेमोक्रेसी को बचाने के लिए कोई बहुत बड़ी कॉस्ट नहीं है. इसके पीछे कोई इकोनॉमिकल कॉस्ट नहीं हो सकता. अगर यहाँ से रीजनल पार्टीज नहीं यहाँ से सर्वाइव करेंगे तो आप कैसे वाइब्रेंट डेमोक्रेसी देखेंगे? और मैं आपको बताता हूँ, ये बर्डन बेसिकली,
ये देखिए डॉक्टर शोएब जमाई, ये उसी तरह का प्रोपेगेंडा है जो एंटी सीए के प्रोटेस्ट के समय हुआ था. डॉक्टर जमाई, डॉक्टर जमाई, इफ यू मेक एन आर्गुमेंट यू विल हैव टू सब्सटैंशिएट विद फैक्ट्स. आई कैन टेल यू 1 minute. Those who are 1 minute. Dr. Jamai, 1 minute. Listen to me. Ms. Ghosh began by saying that this is a top-down committee. Now I don't want to get into that argument, but IP Singh ji, there are many who are saying ये रीजनल पार्टीज के खिलाफ है. टीडीपी रीजनल पार्टी है सर, जेडीयू रीजनल पार्टी है, वो भी तो समर्थन कर रहे हैं. मायावती, वो तो एनडीए में नहीं है, रीजनल पार्टी है, वो समर्थन कर रही हैं. समाजवादी पार्टी के कुछ नेता हैं जो समर्थन कर रहे हैं. आपके जो प्रेसिडेंट है वो कुछ और बोल रहे हैं.
देखिए, नोटबंदी का हस्र देश देख चुका है. 2014 में 100 स्मार्ट सिटीज की बात करी, वो भी देश देखा है. सवाल यह है कि महाराष्ट्र में जिस तरह से बीजेपी ने शिवसेना लेड गवर्नमेंट को गिरा दिया और उनके विधायकों को लेकर वो असम गए, अगर ऐसे हालात उत्पन्न होंगे फिर क्या होगा? और अगर आप चुनाव कराना ही चाहते हैं तो सबसे पहले 4 राज्यों के जो चुनाव थे एक साथ करा लिए होते. चलिए, दो राज्यों के चुनाव, झारखंड, महाराष्ट्र के, उसके साथ उत्तर प्रदेश और दिल्ली का चुनाव करा लीजिए. उससे भी अगर आपका मन अगर नहीं पूरा हो पा रहा, नहीं करना चाहते हैं, तो 4, 5, 6 महीने बीत गया. बीजेपी अपना अपने जिले यूनिट से लेकर स्टेट और नेशनल तक का एक बार चुनाव करा के दिखा दे. ग्राम प्रधान से लेकर प्रधानमंत्री के बीच का जो चुनाव है, पंचायती राज तो स्वर्गीय राजीव गांधी लेकर आए. और मुझे याद है कि स्वर्गीय कल्याण सिंह ने उत्तर प्रदेश में पंचायती राज लागू किया. उसके बाद नगर निकाय के चुनाव हैं. कल को आप ये प्राइवेटाइज कर देंगे और कहेंगे कि ये सब जितनी एजेंसीज हैं.
नहीं, आईपी सिंह जी, मैं आपको बताता हूं सवाल क्या है. सवाल बहुत सिंपल है. आंसर अ स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन. आईपी सिंह जी, Why do you think this is anti-constitution? ये गैर संवैधानिक क्यों कह रहे हैं आप इसको?
सवाल है कि प्रधानमंत्री जुमला फेंकते हैं। महिला आरक्षण पर क्या हुआ? प्रधानमंत्री ने 100 बातें ऐसी
देखिए, वन शो वन डिबेट करते हैं। अब ये महिला आरक्षण, डिमोनेटाइजेशन, क्या हो गया आईपी सिंह आपको?
चला गया
सर, कांट यू अंडरस्टैंड a straight forward question?
ये कह रहा हूं कि प्रधानमंत्री
ये असंवैधानिक कैसे? सागरिका घोष, मैम, do you believe this is an unconstitutional move? Straight question.
Let me explain it to you. There's a fog of misinformation here. So let me just set down a few points, which I think will be beneficial for your panelists and for your viewers. I completely agree with my colleague from the Samajwadi Party who says that this is yet another jumla. Now, the fact is that on the practicality, how is it going to work, right? If a government falls midterm, if the central government falls, what happens to the rest of the state governments?
That is yet to be decided, Ms. Ghosh.
If a state government falls, does the central government will it lose its term? What I'm saying is that the legislation on this exercise, please understand, a law has to come with a lot of legislative points with it. It's a legislative omnibus. Now, to create the legislation of this is going to take, and I welcome the BJP to come to the Trinamool Congress. We will hold a tutorial. A legislation of this nature will take at least 10 years. It's going to take 10 years. How will you dissolve the assemblies? How will you convince the assemblies to ratify
Ms. Ghosh,
a law
for the concerns that you expressing, we have something which is called the Parliament, of which you are a member. This will be discussed there. It does not have to be in the TMC office. But answer a question. You've been saying that the BJP ma'am, you've been saying that the BJP is a huge, strong election machine, correct? You believe that?
I believe it's an election machine,
okay.
Yes.
Then, so if they are going to hold one nation, one poll, isn't it good for you? Now imagine, all of you, the alliance partners, can rally your forces together at once.
Mr. Roy, it is not about whether it's good for you and it's bad for you. You ask the question of whether it is against the Constitution.
Okay.
The Constitution specifies, the Constitution does not specify one nation, one government.
Wonderful, ma'am. I was wanting to come to this point. Now that you're talking about the Constitution talks about UCC. Now tell me, do you back the UCC?
I thought we were talking about one nation, one...
Of course, you were talking about the Constitution. I'm talking about what the Constitution says.
Now, we are focusing here on
you will talk about only one provision of the Constitution.
And in this debate, we have to look at whether the Constitution is saying, should we be a one nation, one government?
The Constitution says that let's strive to bring in uniform civil code. Dr. Ranganathan, you see how the goalpost keeps changing by the minute.
The Constitution also
says...
Yeah, Tessin, I'll come to you.
Yeah. Now, not just the goalpost, the entire stadium has changed. No, but 3 points very quickly. Number one, मैं आईपी सिंह जी की बहुत रिस्पेक्ट करता हूं, बहुत इरुडाइट हैं और बड़े भाई की तरह हैं, लेकिन इनको लगता है वो नोटिफिकेशन मिला नहीं बिकॉज प्रनेश, वन ऑफ द पार्टीज दैट इज सपोर्टिंग द वन नेशन वन पोल इज एक्चुअली समाजवादी पार्टी. समाजवादी पार्टी has come out in support of one nation one poll. तो आपको थोड़ा सा ये आज थोड़ी गलती हो गई. इनको पता नहीं चला कि अखिलेश यादव and समाजवादी पार्टी are supporters of one nation one poll. Number two, somebody please explain again what were the differences 50 years ago when Jawaharlal Nehru for 15 years was against the constitution, against the structure, federal structure of the constitution, and right now the Congress is saying that no, that was not the case. And finally, my good friend Tehseen, I need to say this, it's very important. Tehseen was asked to talk about the disadvantages and advantages of one nation, one poll. Instead, he's talked of the obvious, which I agree with him. BJP is a hypocritical party, of course it is. So for him to say, wax eloquent about why aren't 3 or 4 state polls being, not synchronized right now, BJP would like to take advantage, whatever little it can, whatever more it can. The point is, it is also the BJP that has brought this to the floor of the parliament. You need to accept that, Tehseen, and talk about the issues. You are not able to tell even single point that is against one nation, one poll.
Right.
And
Tehsil, before you answer that, the first
question.
question was addressed to Sagarika Ghosh. It's only fair that she gets to answer the question on the issue of principle and how Nehru's or one nation, one poll under Nehru was not anti-constitution.
That's the one
The panelist is thirsty for answers, and I'm ready to answer this question. The fact is that I commend the curiosity and thirst for knowledge. It's important. The thirst and quest for knowledge must always be with us. The political context, as I said, from the 1960s to now has completely changed. It's chalk and cheese. It's completely different now. Nehru's reality, and Nehru was India's greatest Prime Minister and the greatest Democrat. So I'm not accusing him for once, as the panelists seem to be saying in his confused venting about various things about Nehru. I'm not for a second suggesting that Nehru did not want to uphold the federal structure, that he did not want to uphold the rights of states. But what has happened now is, with the rise of the regional parties, with the rise of smaller parties, which represent very small demographics, with the rise of a highly diversified and localized polity, we now have a situation where Indian politics has become hyper-local. It's not even state-wise. It is actually constituency-wise. It is
Ms. Ghosh, who's denying that? You're saying it for the fifth time. Who's denying that?
Now,
things have become hyper-local.
Polity. Now, 1 minute. Let me finish, Mr. Roy. You have a thirst for knowledge.
That's okay. We should all have thirst for knowledge.
So, the idea that you can have a national referendum, that every election will be a referendum on a single leader, a referendum on a single party, a national referendum, goes against the spirit of the times, because we have become a multi-party, multi-government, multi-local, diverse, democratic, highly localized polity. It doesn't suit the times. Nehru's time was different. It was a simpler polity. There were two parties. It was not the regional parties didn't exist.
Is TDP a national party or a regional party? Ms. Ghosh, 1 minute, ma'am.
It is a completely
No, you'll have to quench my thirst. 1 minute.
Yeah,
is TDP is TDP a regional party or a national party?
I beg your pardon?
Is TDP a regional party? Is BSP a regional party?
What is the question here?
I'll tell you. Answer the first part.
Of course, these are regional parties.
Then they are not afraid. They are backing this proposal.
I am speaking about it from the point of view of the Constitution, from the point of view of the Trinamool Congress, and from the point of view.
Now, when I asked you a question on Constitution, on the principle of UCC, you said, let's talk about this. But Dr. Ranganathan, are you? I'll come to you. Tehsil, 1 minute. Look at the tutorial that we are having here. 1 minute. Dr. Ranganathan, are you satisfied?
Let's be. No, I'm sorry. My thirst remains unquenched. Maybe better luck next time. I had hoped that the previous panelist had not gone personal and said I'm confused and all. Be that, it is a fact that an ungreased cycle chain also screeches less. The fact of the matter is, for somebody to call Nehru as the greatest Democrat, the guy who brought in the First Amendment to curtail our free speech, the guy who banned tens of books and films and arrested journalists, he is the greatest Democrat, be that as it may. Let's leave the education aside and learning aside. The fact of the matter is, and I go back to Tehsin, because he is one of the more sensible opponents of this scheme. Tehsin, please tell me, how is this against the federal structure period when Nehru implemented it?
I will explain it. May I please do that now?
Please.
Anand is right. For a long period of time, under the various governments, we had one nation, one election. Except by fate, by misuse, by whatever, governments started falling. That process continues even with the BJP. Now, what happens if a government falls? For example, let me give you a practical example of Maharashtra, where they split up the Shiv Sena and the NCP. What happens then? Do the people of my state have a right to elect a new government? Does it continue? What happens then? Or do we remain without an assembly? What happens when Telangana just got a new chief minister 2 years? Why does he sacrifice? Why does Karnataka continue beyond its time limit? So these are constitutional amendments. But 1 second, if everyone has to sacrifice for the country, and I agree, chalo, like demonetization, we'll all sacrifice. Why doesn't this start when the Honorable Prime Minister come on Times Now at 8 p.m. He loves coming at 8 p.m. and say, it begins with me. I will sacrifice first. I will leave in 2 years and let's do one nation, one poll. वो नहीं करेंगे. That they will not do. They'll ask the state government.
I'll tell you
and
what
that is why this is against
I'll
the
tell you. Tehseen, let me answer that.
Let me denied its rights.
Let me answer that. Kovind panel has addressed early expiry of state legislatures. Here's what they've said. Where the Legislative Assembly is dissolved sooner than the expiry of its full term, fresh elections will be held and a new assembly is constituted pursuant to elections occasioned by such dissolution. Then such new Legislative Assembly, unless sooner dissolved, shall come to an end with the expiry of the full term of the House of the People. So there are provisions, and like I said, 1 minute, I'll tell you.
One nation, one election, no? Just like it's not the proposed UCC.
So you have a problem with the name. So you have a problem with the name. Let's rename it.
One second. You spoke about UCC. You diverted to UCC.
One second.
In UCC, just Anand, come on. We've got a point here. You diverted to UCC on
I did not. I was talking. No, I did not divert. I was no. My question to Ms. Ghosh was on the principle of constitution. This was not diversion or distraction. Tehseen, no, don't say that.
Just like UCC is not UCC in Uttarakhand, they've given an exception to tribal.
I was only talking about the principle of the constitution because she brought it up.
Not one nation, one election.
Then you have a problem with the name. You have a problem with the name of the logistics.
What is the debate about if it's not?
So you have a problem with the name. So do you have a problem with the name?
Basically, we had a cabinet meeting that just passed a resolution.
Okay, Dr. Ranganathan,
that's proof.
Let's rename this.
This is the this is the classic case.
Let him.
This is a very please. Because you're in the studio, you cannot be faded out like the rest of us.
Please speak.
Yeah. You see, what you're doing is a classic red herring because you're talking about and bloating the exceptions rather than the rule.
He read it, bro.
Now, Tehseen, please, we cannot continue like this. When you talk of the dissolution before time of a state assembly, exactly that issue, as Pranesh rightly said, has been addressed by Mr. Kovind, because that is something that is important and to be redressed. It has been.
How?
But you again,
it's not one nation, one election.
The point is, you are talking of exception. You are not talking of the rule. And I do agree that for synchronization to happen, it will take, as Ms. Ghosh also rightly says, possibly 10 years. But at least debate on the issues, the pros and cons of it.
And by the way, Tehseen, the problem is that you think this will only apply to non-BJP rules.
No,
that's not the case. It will apply to the BJP rule states. So Tuhin Sinha has been listening
intently. But not to the central government. They are not sacrificing. Why should Mamta ji sacrifice and not Modi ji?
You know, Pranesh,
they will all have to sacrifice.
Will the central government sacrifice?
I appreciate Tehseen's curiosity. But like you mentioned, Ram Nath Kovind ji's report, only mentions a basic roadmap. Eventually, it will be discussed in Parliament. The TMC representative is a member of Parliament. That is exactly where the final clauses and the final rules will be decided. But, I've heard everybody very intently. I'm afraid the opposition has not been able to provide any plausible reason for opposing it. In fact, I suspect the TMC could be opposing it because, it might curb the kind of violence they perpetrate during elections, because synchronized elections would mean greater focused, deployment of armed forces also. But apart from that, I can't see any reason why they have been opposing it.
Ms. Ghosh.
I reiterate that, first of all, the Kovind committee is a top-down committee. The states have not been taken into consideration. Considering that the states are the major stakeholders in this particular law, the states have not been taken into consideration. You have not had a proper interface with the states. You have not had dialogue with the states. You have brought this committee. You are now floating the idea suddenly of one nation, one poll, because you're facing a slew of defeats from now until October, and also because you need a weapon of mass distraction, as I was saying. Now, the fact is the trust factor is missing between the opposition and the government. This government is anti-federal. It is anti-states. It is doing everything in its power to erode the autonomy of states. I don't need to tell you here how Bengal has been denied its Manrega dues. Bengal has been denied dues for Awas Yojana. Other states are complaining they don't get drought relief in time. That's Tamil Nadu has been complaining. Opposition rule states are complaining that they do not get central funding.
The states have you are questioning the
1 minute. Mr. Roy, if you are asking me a question and then you come in with some side cul-de-sac or some sort of diversion that I'm not able to completely complete my thought. The fact is that there is a trust deficit between the center and the states, and for there to be this, and there is a reason for this trust deficit. Let me tell you that it was the BJP that consistently opposed special status to Andhra Pradesh. Now that Andhra Pradesh, the TDP, is a supporter of the government of the center, now they're all giving a bonanza.
Mayawati isn't a supporter. Mayawati is not part of the NDA. Ms. Ghosh, 1 minute. The trouble is that when you come prepared for a set of questions and then something comes out of syllabus, then you start going after the anchor. I asked you one question on the principle of the Constitution, and look at the way you're responding. Ms. Ghosh, 1 minute. You were talking about the consultative process and how states were not, consulted. As many as 37 parties, 27 here in page number 2, 33 parties, then 7 registered unrecognized parties, then you have 5 more. A total of 46 parties across the country were consulted. How can you question the process?
The process has been top down. We have not been consulted. The
TMC wrote a letter, ma'am. Mamata Banerjee wrote a letter.
I contest that. I would like you to see our chairperson's letter where she has said that there has been no consultation with the major opposition parties in the states. Therefore, it is completely against the. It is against Article 1, which is that India, that is Bharat, is a union of states. It is against federalism. It is against diversity. And federalism is part of the basic structure of the Constitution, which is why this move is against the basic structure of the Constitution, and it is anti-constitutional.
Ma'am, the chart that I have, All India Trinamool Congress, the date is 11th January 2024. Favor or against, the TMC took a stand against the proposal. Now, for you to say on national television that you doubt it, I don't know what to make of this, but...
Which proposal?
The proposal sent by this panel, the Kovind panel.
Because there has been no attempt to reach out to major opposition parties in the consultative process at all.
Let me quote from the letter, ma'am. I disagree with your formulation and proposal. While I understand the meaning of one nation in a historical, political, cultural sense, I do not understand the exact constitutional and structural implications of the term in the present case. Does the Constitution follow the concept of one nation, one government? I am afraid it does not. This is what Mamata Banerjee had said. This is the letter to the Secretary of the One Nation, One Election panel. So maybe you missed
I think that speaks for itself. The Constitution does not in any
doesn't
way
this underline consultation?
One government.
Dr. Ranganathan, does this underline consultation, yes or no?
No, look, I began my argument by asking you a question. And that question was, I gave you 12 examples of Congress policies that it had implemented, that it had brought forth to the table, that were its ideas, that the moment Modi and the BJP started implementing them, they started going hammer and tongs against them. Farm law, CAA, bullet train, so many others. So for them to say now that there has been zero consultation process, I mean, there is a committee, and as Toheen rightly said, the place to discuss this is the parliament, and rightly it should be discussed. And as I said, even I am undecided on this. There are advantages and disadvantages.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. He said, don't dismiss it. Let's have a discussion. But we've run out of time on this one. We have another important debate to do. I thank all of you, gentlemen, and Sagarika Ghosh for joining us on India Upfront. Viewers, let's move on.